For 3 months, I let myself believe this life was actually mine to keep. I had a solid desk in Lake Briar and a manager who trusted me. Then came the calendar invite. Urgent meeting regarding employment verification. As I walked toward human resources, the air left the room. It was the same invisible noose that had yanked me back every time I tried to run, tightening just as I started to breathe. I was 32, but suddenly, I was a thief again. The fluorescent lights of the open-plan office in Lake Briar always hummed with a frequency that sounded like safety to me. It was a low, steady drone, the sound of productivity and boredom, and I loved it. For the last 4 months, I had come to view my cubicle as a fortress. The walls were fabric-wrapped beige, pinning up calendars and project timelines that mapped out a future I finally felt entitled to believe in. I was 32 years old, and for the first time in nearly a decade, my bank account had a comma in it that wasn't followed by a negative sign. I had a 401k that I had actually logged into twice. I had a potted succulent on my desk that I hadn't killed yet. These were small, mundane victories, but after years of nomadic employment and sudden, inexplicable exits, they felt like miracles. My manager, a frantic but kind woman named Denise, had dropped a file on my desk earlier that morning with a sticky note attached that read, "Great work on the Q3 projections." I had stared at that yellow square of paper for 5 minutes, drinking my coffee, letting the validation soak into my bones. It was proof. I was capable. I was reliable. I was not the person my history suggested I was. Then the instant messenger notification chimed on my screen. It was from the Director of Human Resources. The message was brief. "Sarah, please come to my office. Bring your badge." The air in my lungs turned into concrete. Bring your badge. There is a specific kind of trauma that comes from being fired for something you didn't do. It bypasses the logical part of your brain that wants to ask why, and goes straight to the primal part that screams run. I stared at the blinking cursor. My hands, which moments ago had been confident on the keyboard, began to tremble. I slid my hands under my thighs to stop them, taking a deep breath that shuddered on the way in. It is just a mistake, I told myself. Maybe it is for a new photo, maybe security access, but I knew. The rhythm of my life had a sickening predictability to it. Just as the ground hardened beneath my feet, the trapdoor opened. I stood up. I didn't grab my purse. I didn't lock my computer. I walked down the long, gray-carpeted hallway toward the glass-walled office at the corner of the floor. The walk felt like a funeral march for a life I had barely started living. When I entered, the HR director, a man named Gary who had welcomed me with a branded water bottle and a smile 16 weeks ago, was not smiling. He was sitting behind his desk, his hands clasped over a manila folder. Beside him sat a woman I didn't recognize, likely legal counsel or a witness. The dynamic was instant and suffocating. "Please, sit down," Gary said. His voice was flat. I sat. The chair was low. I felt like a child called to the principal's office. "Sarah, we are going to cut right to it," Gary said, avoiding my eyes. "We have received some information regarding your employment history and character that contradicts the vetting we performed upon your hiring. A serious concern has been raised during a routine secondary verification call." I felt the blood drain from my face. "What concern?" I asked. My voice sounded thin, foreign to my own ears. "I passed the background check. I have been here 4 months. My performance reviews are—" "This is not about performance," the woman interrupted. She had a notepad but wasn't writing anything. She was watching me, studying my reaction. "This is about integrity. We have been made aware of a pattern of financial discrepancies in your past roles. Given the sensitive nature of our client data here, we cannot ignore this." "Financial discrepancies?" I choked on the words. "That is not true. I have never stolen a dime from anyone." Gary sighed, a sound of professional fatigue. "Sarah, the allegation comes from a credible, verified source. It puts us in a liability position, effective immediately. You are being placed on administrative leave pending a full reevaluation of your offer and employment contract." "Who?" I demanded. the shock giving way to a desperate heat. "Who called you? You have to tell me. I have the right to know who is destroying my reputation. It is confidential," Gary said. He slid a piece of paper across the desk. "This outlines the terms of your leave. You are to hand over your badge and laptop immediately. You are not to access company systems. You are not to contact clients or colleagues." "Gary, please," I said, and I hated the beg in my voice. "I didn't do anything. Whatever you heard, it is a lie. I can prove. Please give me your badge. Sarah." The finality of it silenced me. I unclipped the plastic rectangle from my waistband. My photo, smiling and hopeful, stared back at me before I placed it on the mahogany desk. I stood up, my legs feeling like water. I didn't go back to my desk to get my purse. The woman escorted me. She stood there, arms crossed, while I put my wallet and keys into my bag, leaving the succulent and the sticky note behind. The walk to the elevator was a blur of humiliation. I kept my head down, praying Denise wouldn't come out of her office and ask where I was going. When the elevator doors closed, cutting off the view of the office I had allowed myself to love, I didn't cry. I couldn't. I was too busy falling down the memory hole. Back to where this all started. I was 23 again. It was my first real job out of college. A junior coordinator role at a logistics firm in Chicago. I had been eager, hungry to please, the first one in and the last one out. Then, 6 months in, $50 went missing from the petty cash box. It was a lockbox that 5 other people had keys to. There was no camera. There was no audit trail. But the office manager, a woman who played bridge with my mother, had pulled me aside and told me it would be best if I resigned. "We don't want to make this a police matter." "Sarah," she had said, her voice dripping with faux sympathy, "just go, and we will keep it quiet." I had cried then. I had begged. I had sworn on my life I hadn't taken it. But the look in her eyes, the certainty that I was guilty, had broken me. I resigned to avoid the scene, thinking I could just move on. But the whisper followed. Back-channel warnings. That was what a recruiter had told me 3 years later. After a job offer was rescinded 48 hours before my start date. "People talk. Sarah, off the record, they say you have sticky fingers." I sat in my car in the parking lot of the Lake Briar Office Park, gripping the steering wheel until my knuckles turned white. It was happening again. I was 32. I drove a sensible sedan. I paid my taxes, and yet I was still that 23-year-old girl in the eyes of some invisible jury. I needed to call them. I didn't want to, but the conditioning was deep. When the world breaks, you call your parents. I dialed the number for the house in Cedar Hollow. My mother, Linda, picked up on the 3rd ring. "Hello?" Her voice was crisp, light. She was probably arranging flowers or looking at fabric swatches. "Mom," I said. I tried to keep my voice steady, but it cracked. It happened again. There was a pause, a heavy, loaded silence that I knew better than my own heartbeat. "Oh, Sarah," she said. The lightness vanished, replaced by a weary, long-suffering sigh. "What did you do?" "I didn't do anything," I snapped, the tears finally stinging my eyes. "I was at work. I was doing my job. HR called me in. Someone called them. Mom. Someone called and said I was a thief. I heard a rustle on the line. Mark," she called out, away from the receiver but loud enough for me to hear. "Mark, pick up the extension. It is Sarah. She has lost another one." My stomach twisted. Lost another one. Like I was misplacing sunglasses. My father's voice clicked onto the line a moment later. "Sarah? Dad. They put me on administrative leave." I said, desperate for someone to be angry for me, not at me. They said a reference called, "A serious concern about my integrity." "Dad, you know I didn't steal that money 9 years ago. You know it." "Sarah, lower your voice," Mark said. His tone was chilly, detached. "We are not going to have this hysterical conversation again. If you run into the same problem everywhere you go, you have to look at the common denominator. I am the victim here." I shouted at the dashboard. "Someone is sabotaging me." "Sabotage," Linda repeated, the word tasting sour in her mouth. That is a very dramatic word. Sweetie, why would anyone bother? You are creating chaos. Sarah, you always do. We have vouched for you. We have smoothed things over where we could. But we cannot keep cleaning up your messes. I am not asking you to clean it up. I said, my voice dropping to a whisper, I am asking you to believe me. We believe that you believe you are innocent, Mark said. A masterpiece of diplomatic cruelty. But perception is reality. Sarah, and your reputation is complicated. Do not drag the family into this mess again. We have a dinner with the Hendersons on Saturday, and I do not want this cloud hanging over the weekend. The Hendersons, I repeated dully. Right. Enjoy your dinner. I hung up. I stared at the phone, feeling the familiar mix of shame and rage. They didn't care that I was unemployed. They cared that I was an embarrassment. I needed a drink, and I needed Jenna. Jenna Miles had been my lifeline since freshman year of college. She was the only person who knew the full, ugly history of my employment record without judging it. I met her at the Rusty Anchor, a dive bar on the edge of town where the lighting was dim enough to hide red eyes. When I walked in, she was already in a booth, 2 margaritas waiting. She took one look at my face and slid a glass toward me. Tell me, she commanded. I told her everything, the meeting, the nebulous serious concern, the call to my parents, the way my dad had talked about the Hendersons. Jenna listened, her eyes narrowing behind her glasses. She didn't interrupt. She just drank her margarita and watched me unravel. When I finished, she leaned forward, her elbows on the sticky table. Sarah, stop crying and listen to me, she said. How long have you been at this job? 4 months. I sniffed. And before that? The marketing gig in Chicago? 6 months. And the one before that? 2 months. I got let go during the probation period. Okay, Jenna said. And when was the last time you saw your parents before this happened? I frowned, wiping my eyes with a cocktail napkin. Last Sunday, I went over for brunch. Aunt Carol was there, and some neighbors, and the Chicago job? Jenna pressed. I don't know. It was right after Thanksgiving. Jenna tapped her fingernails on the table. Sarah, you are smart, but you have a blind spot the size of Texas when it comes to them. Look at the timing. Every time you get settled, every time you start to feel safe, the rug gets pulled. It always lines up with a family gathering. A holiday, a brunch. You think my parents are calling my jobs? I asked, shaking my head. That is insane. Jenna, they care about appearances more than anything. Why would they want an unemployed daughter? It makes them look bad. It makes them look like saints, Jenna corrected. The long-suffering parents supporting their troubled, wayward daughter. It keeps you needy. Sarah, it keeps you coming back to them for money, for approval. Control is a hell of a drug. It is not them, I insisted, though a cold dread was curling in my gut. They are cold. Yeah, but they aren't monsters. Then it is someone close to them, Jenna said. Someone they talk to. Someone who listens to Linda whine about her complicated daughter and decides to play hero, or executioner. She reached into her bag and pulled out a notepad. You said HR mentioned a verification call. Did they give you a name? No. They said it was confidential. Did you see anything? A caller ID? A note on the desk? I closed my eyes, replaying the scene in the glass office, the folder, the woman, the paper Gary had slid across. But wait, on his computer monitor, he had minimized a window when I walked in, but the phone log software was still open on the side. The number, I whispered. I saw the last 4 digits on the screen. And the area code, 312. Chicago. Do you remember the digits? 5509. I said, I think it was a 312 area code. Then something. Then 5509. Jenna handed me her phone. We are not drinking another drop until we find that number. It took us an hour. We searched combinations of the area code and the last 4 digits, cross-referencing with business directories in Chicago. It was a needle in a haystack, until Jenna searched for HR consulting firm Chicago and started filtering by the suffix. Got it, she said. Turning the screen to me, Denton Associates, Human Capital Solutions. The phone number listed ended in 5509. Denton, I said, the name striking a bell deep in my memory. Why do I know that name? I took the phone and scrolled to the Our Team page. There, smiling in a black and white headshot that projected aggressive competence, was Paula Denton, senior advisor. My breath hitched. I know her. Who is she? Jenna asked. She's in my mom's book club, I said, staring at the face of the woman who had likely just torpedoed my career. I saw her at Christmas 2 years ago. She cornered me in the kitchen. She gave me this long lecture about how millennials feel entitled to success, and how I should be grateful my parents were willing to cushion my falls. She told me I needed to learn humility. Paula Denton, Jenna said, her voice hard. A professional reference checker? Or an HR consultant? Consultant, I read from the screen, specializing in risk mitigation and executive vetting. Sarah, Jenna said, grabbing my hand, this isn't a coincidence. Your mom complains to Paula. Paula, the expert, decides to look into you, or maybe your mom asks Paula to check on you. Paula calls your job, drops a poison pill about integrity, and boom, you are out, and your parents get to say, told you so. I pulled my hand away. I felt sick. I need to go. Where? To confront them? No. I said, if I go there now, I will scream, and they will call me hysterical again. I need to go see Grandma. Jenna looked worried. Evelyn? Is she up for this? She is the only one who doesn't look at me like I'm a crime scene. I said. I left Jenna at the bar and drove to the outskirts of town. To the small, clapboard house where Evelyn Hart lived. My grandmother was 78, a woman of few words and sharp eyes. She had been the one soft place to land my entire life. But lately, she had been distant, quiet. It was nearly 8 o'clock when I pulled into her driveway. The porch light was off, which was unusual. Evelyn was meticulous about the porch light. I let myself in with my key. Grandma? I called out. The house smelled of lavender and old paper. The scent of my childhood. I found her in the kitchen, sitting at the small round table. She wasn't reading. She wasn't knitting. She was just sitting there, her hands folded over a ceramic mug of tea that had stopped steaming long ago. Sarah, she said. She didn't sound surprised. She didn't look up immediately. I had a feeling you might come by. I sat opposite her. The kitchen light was dim, casting long shadows across her face. She looked older than I remembered seeing her last week. Her skin seemed translucent, like parchment paper stretched too thin. I lost my job. I said, I didn't dress it up for her. Evelyn finally looked at me. Her eyes were gray, usually bright with a dry wit, but tonight they were clouded with something else. Sorrow? Resignation? I know, she said softly. I blinked. You know? How? Did Mom call you? She called. Evelyn said, she told me you were in trouble again, that you had disappointed everyone. It is a lie, I said, the exhaustion finally crashing over me. It is all a lie. Grandma, I found out who called. It was Paula Denton. Mom's friend. She called my job and told them I was a thief. Evelyn didn't gasp. She didn't frown. She just watched me with that intense, unnerving stillness. She reached out to pick up her tea, and I saw her hand tremble violently. The cup rattled against the saucer. Grandma? I reached out to steady her hand. Her skin was ice cold. Are you okay? Just a spell, she whispered. Closing her eyes for a moment, passes quickly. I looked around the kitchen, really looking for the first time, on the counter, usually spotless. There was a 7-day pill organizer that was empty, though it was only Tuesday. Beside it, a stack of mail sat unopened. Bills, circulars, oversized envelopes. Evelyn never left mail unopened. Grandma, are you taking your heart medication? I asked, panic rising. And this mail. Never mind the mail, she snapped, a flash of her old fire returning. She pulled her hand away from mine. We are talking about you, about Paula Denton, about your parents. She took a breath, steeling herself. She looked at me, and I saw a woman who was tired of holding up the sky. "Sarah," she said, "you are 32 years old. You have spent the last 9 years running in circles, wondering why the ground keeps giving way. I am trying." I said, "I am trying so hard." "I know you are," she said, "but you are fighting a war you don't even know you are in. You think this is bad luck. You think this is just life being unfair." She pushed the teacup away. "I have watched them," she said, her voice dropping lower. "Mark and Linda, I have watched how they talk about you. I have watched who they talk to, and I have kept my mouth shut because I thought if I interfered, I would lose access to you. I thought I could protect you better by staying close to them." She winced, a spasm of pain crossing her face, but she waved off my concern. "Grandma, we should get you to a doctor," I said, standing up. "Sit down." Her voice cracked like a whip. I sat. Evelyn leaned forward. The frailty seemed to evaporate, replaced by a terrifying clarity. "I have been waiting for you to be angry enough," she said, "not sad, not hurt, angry. Are you angry, Sarah?" "Yes," I whispered. "I am furious." "Good," she said, "because sadness won't help you do what needs to be done." She looked toward the hallway, toward the closet where she kept her linens and the old vacuum cleaner. Then she looked back at me, her gaze locking onto mine. "If I told you I have proof," she said, "every word weighted like a stone, real proof, dates, recordings, papers that show exactly what they have done to you for the last decade. If I gave that to you, would you actually use it?" I stared at her. "Use it? It will destroy them," Evelyn said bluntly. "Not physically, but it will strip them bare. It will tear this family apart in a way that can never be stitched back together. If I give you the weapon, Sarah, will you pull the trigger? Or will you protect them again, like a good daughter?" The silence in the kitchen was absolute. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. I could hear the wind rattling the window pane. I thought of the walk to the glass office. I thought of the succulent on my desk. I thought of my father's voice saying perception is reality. I looked at my grandmother, frail and fierce, offering me the nuclear codes to my own life. "Show me," I said. The lobby of the corporate park in Lake Briar felt different when I walked in 2 days later. Before, it had been a gateway to my future. Now, it felt like the mouth of a glass beast that had already chewed me up and was preparing to spit me out. I wasn't wearing my badge because it was sitting in a drawer in Gary's office. I had to sign in at the security desk like a visitor, writing Sarah Cooper and HR under the column for purpose of visit. The security guard, a man I had exchanged pleasantries with every morning for 4 months, didn't make eye contact. I wasn't there to beg. I was there because the silence was eating me alive. When Gary finally came out to the lobby to collect me, he didn't bring me back to his office. He led me to a small, windowless conference room near the elevators, the kind used for quick vendor meetings or firing people who made a scene. He didn't offer me water. He sat on the edge of the table, crossing his arms, his body language screaming that this was a waste of his time. "Sarah, we have already discussed the terms of your administrative leave," Gary said. "You are not supposed to be on the premises." I kept my hands folded on the table to hide the shaking. "I am aware of the terms, Gary, but I am also aware of my rights. You have placed me on indefinite unpaid leave based on an anonymous phone call. I want the specific reason in writing. I want the name of the verifier. And I want to see the specific company policy that allows you to suspend an employee based on third-party hearsay after a background check has already been cleared." Gary sighed, looking at the ceiling tile as if searching for patience. "It is not hearsay. Sarah, it is a verified professional reference check, and we are not obligated to disclose the source of confidential employment verification data. That is standard policy to protect the reporter." "Protect them from what?" I asked, my voice rising just a fraction. "From the truth? I have a right to face my accuser. You said there was a serious concern. What is the specific allegation? Is it theft? Is it fraud? If you are destroying my livelihood, the least you can do is tell me what I am being charged with. Gary stood up, signaling the end of the meeting. We have questions regarding your fit and integrity. Sarah, in this industry, trust is the currency. When that trust is compromised, we have to act. You will receive an update by the end of the week via email. Please escort yourself out, or I will have to call security. Fit and integrity. The words echoed in my head as I walked back to my car. They were nebulous, unassailable terms. You couldn't disprove a lack of fit. It was a ghost. I drove straight to Jenna's apartment. It was a chaotic sanctuary of half-finished paintings and overflow bookshelves, a stark contrast to the sterile hell I had just left. Jenna was already at her laptop, her face set in a grim line. They stonewalled me. I said, dropping my bag on her sofa, "Fit and integrity," that is all they would say. Jenna cracked her knuckles. Classic corporate speak for we don't have hard proof, but we are too scared to keep you. Sit down. We are writing an email. I already talked to them, I said, sinking into the cushions. Talking evaporates. Jenna said, writing stays. You are going to document exactly what just happened. And Sarah, listen to me closely. You are not going to apologize, not once. You are not going to say you are sorry for the confusion or sorry to be a bother. You are going to state facts. She opened a blank document and started typing, narrating as she went. Dear Gary, following our meeting today, date and time, I am writing to formally request the documentation regarding my suspension. You stated that my integrity was in question due to a phone call from an external source. I want to reiterate that I have no record of professional misconduct. I am requesting a copy of the policy you referenced. I watched the words appear on the screen. They look stronger than I felt. It sounds aggressive. I worried. It sounds like someone who isn't guilty. Jenna corrected. Guilty people beg. Innocent people demand. Send it. I hit send. It felt like throwing a pebble at a tank. But it was something. Now, Jenna said, turning her chair to face me. We need to talk about the source. You said the number linked back to Paula Denton. Your mom's friend. I need to talk to my parents. I said, the thought made my stomach turn over. I need to look them in the eye. If they are behind this, if they actually told Paula to call, I need to see it on their faces. Be careful. Jenna warned, if they are doing this, they aren't just strict parents. Sarah, they are dangerous. The drive to Cedar Hollow took 40 minutes. It was a wealthy, manicured suburb where the lawns were cut to military precision, and the houses looked like they were wearing tuxedos. My parents' house was a sprawling brick colonial at the end of a cul-de-sac. It was the house I had grown up in, the house where I had learned that love was conditional and performance was mandatory. My mother, Linda, answered the door. She was wearing a cream-colored cardigan and holding a gardening trowel, though I knew she paid a service to do the actual planting. Sarah, she said. She didn't step back to let me in immediately. She blocked the doorway, her smile tight. We weren't expecting you. I thought you would be busy. Looking for new opportunities. I am not looking for new opportunities. Mom, I am trying to save the one I have, I said, stepping past her into the foyer. The house smelled of lemon polish and silence. My father, Mark, was in the den, reading a tablet in his leather armchair. He looked up over his reading glasses as I entered. He didn't stand. To what do we owe the pleasure? He asked. His voice was calm, the voice of a man who never raised his tone because he never had to. I know who called my job. I said. I remained standing. I felt like if I sat down, the furniture would swallow me whole. It was a number from Denton and Associates, Paula Denton's firm. Linda walked into the room, placing the trowel on a side table. Paula? She asked, her eyebrows lifting in a performance of mild surprise. Well, Paula is a professional. Sarah, she works in human resources. Perhaps your company hired her firm. My company didn't hire her, I said. She called them. She called them and told them I had integrity issues. She told them I was a risk. Maybe she was just doing her due diligence, Mark said, setting his tablet down. Paula knows this family. She knows the struggles we have had. If she was asked for an opinion, she isn't going to lie. Sarah, she wasn't asked, I said, my hands clenching into fists at my sides. It was an unsolicited verification. And why would she know anything about my struggles unless you told her? Unless you have been feeding her stories about me. Mark stood up then. He was not a tall man, but he had a way of filling a room with his disappointment. He walked over to the window and looked out at the pristine lawn. You always look for a villain. Sarah, he said, it is never your actions. It is always someone out to get you. A reputation follows you. That is just a fact of life. You cannot run from your history. My history of what? I demanded. Of being accused of something I didn't do 9 years ago? Why is that the only history that matters? What about my degree? What about the fact that I have never been late on a bill? Why do you cling to that one moment? Because where there is smoke, there is fire, Linda said softly. She moved closer to Mark, presenting a united front. We have covered for you over the years. Sarah, we have smoothed things over. We have loaned you money when you were between jobs. We have kept the peace. But we cannot control what other people know. Covered for me? I laughed, a harsh, jagged sound. You act like I'm a criminal. I am your daughter. We know, Mark said, turning to face me. His eyes were cold. And that is why it is so painful. To see you repeat these patterns. To see you mishandle opportunities because of missing funds. I froze. What? Missing funds? Linda echoed, nodding. It is the same pattern. Sarah, everywhere you go, there are questions about resources, about missing funds. The air in the room seemed to vibrate. Missing funds. It was such a specific, sterile phrase. It wasn't stealing money. It wasn't petty cash. It was missing funds, and they had both said it within 10 seconds of each other, with the exact same cadence. It felt rehearsed. It felt like a line from a play they had been practicing. I never stole anything. I said, my voice dropping to a whisper, and you know it. There was never an audit. There was never a police report. So why do you keep using that phrase? We are just trying to help you face reality. Mark said, if you want to move forward, you need to accept that you are not cut out for these high-pressure corporate roles. They tempt you. Maybe you should look for something smaller, something less. Exposed. Like what? I asked. Working retail? So I can be dependent on you forever? There is no shame in a simple life, Linda said. We would be happy to help you get settled. Again, I looked at them. Really looked at them. They didn't look like concerned parents. They looked like jailers negotiating the terms of my surrender. I am not quitting, I said, and I am not accepting your help. I'm going to find out exactly what Paula said. And I am going to fix this. Don't make a scene. Sarah, Mark warned, his voice dipping into that subtle threat territory. You do not want to dig too deep. You might not like what you find. And we cannot protect you if you go to war with people like Paula Denton. She has resources you do not have. I don't need your protection. I said, turning to the door. I just need you to stop loving me to death. I walked out. As I closed the heavy front door, I heard Linda say, clear as day, she is getting manic again. Mark. I drove aimlessly for an hour, shaking. The phrase missing funds kept looping in my brain. It sounded legal. It sounded like something you would read in a ledger, not something a mother says to a daughter. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. It was late, past 9 o'clock. I saw the name Grandma on the screen. I picked up. Grandma? Is everything okay? Sarah. Evelyn's voice came through the speakers. It was steady, but there was an urgency I hadn't heard before. It wasn't her usual late-night chatty tone. Where are you? I am driving. I said, I just left Mom and Dad's. Good. She said, listen to me. I need you to come over tomorrow morning. Come at 10. The home health aide leaves at 9:30. I need you to come when I am alone. No one else. Grandma. What is it? Just come, she said. And Sarah? Don't tell your mother you are coming. She hung up. I barely slept that night. I lay in my apartment, staring at the ceiling, feeling the walls closing in. The world felt like a conspiracy. A web spun so tight I couldn't move without alerting the spider. The next morning, I parked my car a block away from Evelyn's house, paranoid that my parents might drive by. I walked to her door at 10 o'clock sharp. Evelyn was waiting for me. She was wearing her good blue dress, the one she usually saved for church. She looked frail, her skin paper thin, but her eyes were burning with that same intensity I had seen the other night. "Lock the door," she said as I stepped inside. I locked it. "Grandma, you are scaring me. What is going on?" She didn't answer. She turned and walked slowly toward the back bedroom, the one she used for storage. I followed her. The room smelled of cedar and mothballs. She walked to the closet and pushed aside a heavy stack of old quilts and linens, revealing the back wall. There, tucked behind a garment bag, was a metal file box. It looked like a fireproof safe, gray and battered. "Get the tin from the kitchen," she commanded, "the one with the biscuit recipes." I ran to the kitchen, grabbed the tin, and brought it back. Evelyn opened it, digging through the flour-dusted index cards until she found a small, silver key taped to the back of a recipe for apple crumble. She handed me the key. "Open it." My hands were trembling as I fit the key into the lock of the metal box. It clicked open with a heavy thud. I lifted the lid. Inside, the box was packed tight with manila envelopes. They were labeled in Evelyn's neat, cursive handwriting. But the labels weren't recipes or tax returns. They were dates and names. 2016. Logistics job. 2018. The marketing agency. 2020. The loan application. 2023. Sarah's apartment lease. I looked up at her, my mouth open. "Grandma, what is this?" Evelyn sat down on the edge of the bed, her breath coming in shallow rasps. "I told you I've been watching," she said. "I started keeping track 7 years ago, when you lost that job in Chicago, the one where you said everything was going fine until it wasn't. I was at dinner with your parents the night before it happened. Linda was on the phone. She went into the hallway. 'But I have good ears,' I heard her say. 'She is not ready. Paula, pull the plug.'" "Pull the plug?" I whispered. I didn't understand it then. Evelyn said, "I thought maybe they were helping you avoid a mistake. But then it happened again and again, so I started collecting." She pointed to the box. "Read them." I pulled out the envelope marked 2018. Inside were photocopies of phone logs. Evelyn had highlighted specific calls from my parents' landline to a number I now recognized as Denton and Associates. There were notes in Evelyn's handwriting. November 12th, Linda called P. Nadi, 20 minutes. November 14th, Sarah fired. I pulled out another envelope. Inside was a transcript of a voicemail. Evelyn had written, "Voicemail left on my machine by mistake." Mark thought he was calling Linda's cell. I read the transcript. "Linda, it is done. I spoke to the hiring manager. I told them about the instability. They are going to rescind the offer. We just need to make sure Sarah thinks it was a budget cut. We can't let her get that independent yet. She will leave us." Tears blurred my vision. It wasn't just sabotage. It was a systematic dismantling of my life. They were clipping my wings every time I tried to fly, then blaming me for falling. "Why?" I choked out. "Why would they do this?" "Control," Evelyn said. "You are their only currency. Sarah, as long as you are failing, you need them. As long as you are the troubled daughter, they are the saintly parents. It feeds them. And—" She hesitated. "There is something else about money. I haven't put all those pieces together yet, but I think they needed you dependent to hide something they did with your name." I dug deeper into the box. At the bottom, there was a plastic sleeve containing a folded piece of paper. It was a printout of an email. "This," Evelyn said, pointing a shaking finger at it. "This came 3 years ago. Linda's printer was broken, so she sent a batch of documents to my printer. She thought she only sent the church bulletin. She didn't realize this was attached." I unfolded the paper. It was an email from Linda to Paula Denton. The subject line was Sarah. Update, Paula. Sarah is getting interviews again, a firm in Oak Brook. We are concerned that if she gets this role, she will move out of the area. We need to make sure employers understand what kind of person Sarah is. Please use the standard narrative regarding the missing funds. It is effective and impossible to verify. We cannot have her looking too closely at the family accounts right now. Best, Linda. The standard narrative. I read aloud. Missing funds. The room spun. It was a script, a weaponized lie they had agreed upon to keep me in a cage. And the line about family accounts? It sent a chill down my spine. I felt so ashamed. I said, dropping the paper, "For years, I thought I was broken. I thought I gave off some vibe that made people distrust me. I thought it was my fault. That is the trap," Evelyn said. Her voice was fierce now. "Shame keeps you small. Sarah, it keeps you quiet. They banked on your shame. They knew you wouldn't fight back if you thought you deserved it." She reached out and gripped my shoulder. Her hand was bony but strong. "You do not deserve it. You never did." I looked at the box. It was a Pandora's box of betrayal. What do I do with this? If I show this to anyone, it is war. They will never forgive me. They will never forgive you for finding out. Evelyn corrected, "But you need armor." She reached into the pocket of her dress and pulled out a business card. It was old, the edges worn soft. Years ago, when I first started this file, I went to see a man. Evelyn said, "A lawyer. I told him I wanted to make a contingency folder, in case I got sick, in case I couldn't tell you myself." I took the card. Briarstone Legal Aid, Arthur P. Miller. He's retired now, but he still consults. Evelyn said, "He owes me a favor from a long time ago. I called him yesterday. He is expecting you." "Grandma," I said, looking at her with a sudden, terrifying realization. "You did all this. For me? You lied to them for years?" "I didn't lie," Evelyn said, smoothing her dress. "I just didn't tell them the truth. There is a difference. I knew one day you would be ready. I just prayed I would be alive to see it." She gestured to the box. "Take it. Take all of it. Make copies. Hide the originals somewhere they can never find. And then go see Arthur." I spent the next hour at the copy shop across town, the one with the self-service machines in the back corner. I photocopied every document, every note, every phone log. The rhythmic swish-click of the copier felt like a heartbeat. Swish-click, evidence, swish-click, betrayal, swish-click, freedom. When I walked out into the sunlight, carrying a heavy tote bag filled with the truth, I felt a strange sensation. The fear was still there. Yes, but the shame? The shame was evaporating. I sat in my car and looked at the business card Evelyn had given me. Arthur P. Miller. I could drive home. I could pretend I never saw this. I could take a retail job and let my parents pay my rent and eat Sunday dinner at their table and be the good, broken daughter they wanted. It would be safe. It would be easy. Or I could burn it all down. I thought of the phrase missing funds. I thought of Linda's email. We cannot have her looking too closely at the family accounts. I put the car in gear. I wasn't going home. I was going to war. The office of Rachel Kim was nothing like the glass and steel fortress where I had just lost my career. It was located in Haven Ridge, a town 2 exits down the highway, tucked on the second floor of a converted brick row house above a bakery. The air in the stairwell smelled of yeast and cinnamon, a domestic comfort that felt jarring against the cold knot of anxiety in my stomach. I held the tote bag containing Evelyn's files against my chest like a shield. Rachel Kim was younger than I expected, perhaps in her late 30s, with sharp eyes and a desk that was organized with terrifying precision. She didn't offer me tea or sympathy. She offered me a legal pad and a pen. "Start from the beginning," she said, "and do not leave out the parts that make you look bad. If I'm going to help you, I need to know where the cracks are." I talked for 40 minutes. I laid out the pattern: the job at the logistics firm, the marketing agency, the sudden rescinded offers, the missing funds narrative, and finally, the box in my grandmother's closet. When I finished, I placed the stack of photocopied phone logs and the email printout on her desk. Rachel picked up the email, the one from my mother to Paula Denton, explicitly mentioning the standard narrative. She read it once, then read it again. She took off her glasses and looked at me. Sarah, you came here thinking this is a family dispute, Rachel said. Her voice was clinical, stripping away the emotion I was drowning in. You think this is about bad parenting or toxic control. It is not. This is tortious interference with prospective economic advantage. It is defamation per se, and depending on how they moved money around, it might be fraud. I blinked. Tortious interference? It is a legal term. She explained, it means someone intentionally damaged your business relationships. Based on this email, your mother didn't just gossip. She solicited a third party, this Paula Denton, to systematically destroy your employability. This isn't drama. It is a calculated campaign to render you unemployable. Hearing it framed that way made the room spin. It wasn't just that my parents were mean. They were breaking the law. The problem, Rachel continued, tapping the paper, is the chain of evidence. This email is the smoking gun, but it is 3 years old. We need to link this behavior to your current situation. We need to prove that Paula Denton's call to your current employer was not a standard reference check, but a malicious act initiated by your parents. How do we do that? I asked. Corroboration, Rachel said. We need witnesses. You said there were other jobs. We need to find out if the same script was used. I need you to call your old supervisors. I need you to request your personnel files. We need to see if the phrase missing funds or theft appears in your termination records. My stomach dropped. You want me to call the people who fired me? I know it is painful, Rachel said, her eyes softening just a fraction. But we need to know what was said. If we can establish a pattern of false statements originating from the same source, we build a case. Without that, this is just a sad story about a complicated family. I left her office with a list of tasks that felt like walking barefoot over broken glass. The next 3 days were a blur of humiliation. I sat at my kitchen table, my phone in front of me, a list of names and numbers scrawled on a notepad. I started with the marketing agency in Chicago. I called the main line and asked for human resources. I was transferred to a woman named Karen, whose voice I vaguely remembered. Hello, this is Sarah Cooper, I said, trying to sound professional despite the tremor in my hand. I worked there in 2018. I am requesting a copy of my personnel file. There was a long pause. Sarah, Karen said. Her tone shifted from polite to guarded. I can send you the standard exit document, but internal notes are confidential. Karen, can you just tell me, was there a specific reason listed for my termination? I pressed. I was told it was a restructuring. That is the official designation. Karen said, but, frankly, Sarah, we received a credible concern regarding financial handling. We didn't have proof, so we went with restructuring to be kind, but that is why you are not eligible for rehire. Received a concern. I wrote on the pad. From whom? I can't disclose that, Karen said, and the line went dead. It was the same story with the logistics firm. We received a concern. It was the same with the temp agency I used in 2020. A concern was raised. It was a script. My parents had unleashed a ghost into my professional life. A formless accusation that terrified HR departments without ever requiring proof. Then I called Tom Alvarez. Tom had been my manager at a small nonprofit 3 years ago. It was a job I had loved, one where I felt I was actually making a difference. I had been up for a promotion to lead a new division, and then, overnight, Tom had turned cold. He had withdrawn the promotion and, 2 weeks later, laid me off citing budget cuts. I didn't call the office. I called his cell. Hello? Tom, it is Sarah Cooper, I said. There was a silence on the line. Heavy, uncomfortable. Sarah, he said finally, I didn't think I would hear from you again. I am not asking for a job. Tom, I said quickly, I am in some legal trouble. I am trying to clear my name. I need to know why you really fired me. He sighed. It was budget cuts. Sarah, we lost the grant. Please, I begged. I know that isn't the whole truth. I know someone called you. I know they said I stole money. Sarah, don't, he said. Tom, my parents are doing this. I said, my voice breaking. They have been doing it for years. They call my employers and lie, so I have to move back home. I have proof. I just need to know if they did it to you, too. The silence stretched for 10 seconds. Then Tom let out a breath that sounded like a confession. "Meet me at the coffee shop on 4th and Main," he said, "in an hour." When I walked into the coffee shop, Tom was sitting in the back corner. He looked tired. He stood up when I approached, but he didn't offer to shake my hand. I sat down. "Thank you for meeting me. You said your parents?" he asked, looking at me with a mix of skepticism and pity. "Sarah, the call I got didn't come from your parents. Then who?" "It was a woman," Tom said. "She said she was an administrator from your college, from the bursar's office." My brow furrowed. "My college? I graduated 10 years ago. She said they were doing an audit of old student worker accounts." Tom explained. "She said you had been flagged for dishonesty. She claimed you had been dismissed from a work-study program for funneling funds into your own account. She said they didn't prosecute because they didn't want to ruin a young student's life. But she felt a moral obligation to warn your current employer since you were handling grant money." I stared at him. The lie was so elaborate, so specific, and completely false. I had worked in the library in college, and I had left with a letter of recommendation. "Tom, that never happened," I said. "I can show you my transcripts. I can show you my references." "I know," Tom said quietly. "About 6 months after you left, I ran into someone from the university at a conference. I asked them about the audit. They looked at me like I was crazy. They said there was no audit, no flagging of student accounts." "You knew it was a lie?" I asked, feeling a fresh wave of betrayal. "And you didn't call me? You didn't try to fix it?" "I had already hired someone else," Tom said, looking down at his coffee. "And honestly, Sarah, the woman on the phone, she was so convincing. She had your student ID number. She knew the dates of your enrollment. I thought, who would make that up? It seemed easier to just let you go. My student ID number," I whispered. "Only my parents would have that paperwork saved." "I am sorry," Tom said. "I really am. I liked you. Sarah, you were good at the job, but in this town, once that kind of dirt is thrown, it sticks. Would you write that down?" I asked. "Would you sign a statement saying you received that call?" Tom hesitated. "I don't want to get involved in a lawsuit. I am not suing you." I said, "I am suing the people who lied to you. Please. Tom, you took my career away because of a lie. Help me get it back." He looked at my face, saw the desperation there. "Okay," he said. "I will write a statement." I brought the information back to Rachel the next day. She looked at Tom's statement, her face grim. "This changes things." Rachel said, "Impersonating a university official? That is fraud, and it shows they are varying the tactics. It is not just concerned neighbor calls. It is sophisticated identity theft. What do we do now?" "We go on the offensive," Rachel said. "We send a preservation letter to Paula Denton's firm. We put them on notice that litigation is pending and that they must not destroy any records related to you, your parents, or your current employer. Will that scare them? It will make them twitch," Rachel said. "And when people twitch, they make mistakes." We sent the letter that afternoon. 2 days later, we got a response. It was a formal letter from Denton Associates' legal department. It was dismissive, almost arrogant. "We confirm receipt of your correspondence." It read, "Denton Associates provides rigorous verification services. We do not issue character judgments. We report factual findings based on our proprietary vetting process. We deny any allegations of impropriety. They are stonewalling." I said, reading the letter over Rachel's shoulder. "Of course they are," Rachel said, "but look at the phrasing. Proprietary vetting process. That is their shield. We need to pierce it." That night, Jenna came over to my apartment with a bottle of wine and her laptop. I told her about the letter, proprietary vetting process. Jenna scoffed. "That sounds like fancy talk for we gossip with your mom." She started typing furiously. "I am going to dig into Denton Associates. If they are this arrogant, they have left tracks somewhere. I sat on the floor, sorting through the photocopies Evelyn had given me. It feels hopeless. Jenna, they have lawyers. They have money. I have a box of old papers and a grandmother who is scared to leave her house. You have me, Jenna said. And you have… Holy cow. I looked up. What? Look at this, Jenna said, turning the laptop toward me. She had pulled up the public procurement records for my current company, the one in Lake Briar. I was looking at their vendor list, Jenna said. Look who just signed a service agreement last month. I squinted at the screen. There, listed under external consultants, HR strategy. Was Denton Associates. They have a contract? I asked. Not just a contract, Jenna said. A massive one. Paula Denton's firm isn't just some random headhunter. They are a paid vendor for your company. That is why HR took the call so seriously. It wasn't an anonymous tip line. It was a flag from a paid consultant. That is a conflict of interest, I said, the pieces clicking together. Paula is getting paid by the company to advise them, and she uses that access to target me specifically because she is friends with my mother. It is a direct pipeline, Jenna said. Your mom feeds the poison to Paula. Paula injects it into the company under the guise of professional consulting, and you are dead in the water before you even swipe your badge. The rage that washed over me was cold and clarifying. It wasn't just personal. It was a business transaction. My destruction was a line item on an invoice. My phone rang. It was my mother. I stared at the screen. My first instinct was to throw the phone across the room, but Rachel had told me to maintain normalcy. Don't let them know you are building a case, she had said. Let them think you are still the confused, desperate daughter. I picked up. Hello? Sarah, Linda said. Her voice was warm, almost sing-song. We are having a roast on Sunday. Your father picked up a lovely prime rib. We want you to come. I don't know if I'm up for it. I lied. Nonsense, Linda said. You need to be around family right now. Isolating yourself isn't healthy. Sarah, it leads to dark thoughts. Come for dinner. 7 o'clock. It wasn't an invitation. It was a summons. I went. I wore a dress my mother had bought me for my birthday. The kind of modest, unremarkable clothing she preferred. When I walked into the house, the smell of roasting meat and expensive perfume hit me like a physical blow. Mark was at the bar, mixing a drink. Sarah, he said, nodding. Glad you could make it. Linda bustled out of the kitchen. You look tired. Sweetie, are you sleeping? I am fine, I said, just figuring things out. We sat at the dining room table. The crystal gleamed under the chandelier. It was a perfect tableau of the American dream, rotting from the inside out. So, Mark said, cutting into his beef, have you given any thought to what is next? I am looking, I said, pushing a potato around my plate. Maybe you should look at something in administration, Linda suggested. Something where you aren't handling assets. You know, just until you build your confidence back up. Starting over again is hard, Mark added, pouring wine. But it is a chance to reset, you know. Sarah, we only want what is best for you. We worry that you aim too high and then crumble when the pressure hits. I didn't crumble, I said, keeping my voice level. I was fired because someone lied about me. Mark put his fork down. The metal clinked sharply against the china. Sarah, he said. His voice dropped an octave. We talked about this. Making accusations you can't prove is a dangerous game. It makes you look unstable. If you go around telling people there is a conspiracy against you, they are going to think you are having a breakdown. I am not having a breakdown. I said, I am just stating facts. Facts are slippery, Linda said, sipping her wine. The fact is, you are unemployed. Again. The fact is, we are the ones feeding you dinner. Again. I looked around the table. There was an empty chair. Usually, if I came for Sunday dinner. Evelyn was there. Where is Grandma? I asked. Linda waved a hand dismissively. Oh, she is resting. She hasn't been feeling well lately. A bit confused. We thought it best she stay home and have a quiet evening. Confused? I asked. She seemed fine when I saw her. When did you see her? Mark asked sharply. I caught myself. Last week. I lied. Before all this happened. Mark relaxed slightly. Well, she is getting older. She gets mixed up about dates. Tells stories that don't make sense. We are thinking about getting her some more help. Maybe looking at a facility where she can be monitored. My blood ran cold. A facility? She lives alone perfectly fine. For now, Linda said. But we have to be proactive. We don't want her hurting herself or being taken advantage of by people who might manipulate her. She looked directly at me when she said it. The message was clear. We know you are talking to her, and if you try to use her against us, we will have her declared incompetent. They were cutting off my supply lines. They were going to neutralize Evelyn to protect themselves. I finished the meal in silence. I felt like I was dining with sharks. When I got home that night, my phone buzzed with a text message. It was from a number I didn't recognize. No area code. Just a string of digits that looked like a burner account. Stop digging. You'll regret what you find. I stared at the glowing screen in the dark of my apartment. It wasn't a threat of violence. It was psychological warfare. They knew. They knew I was looking into Denton. They knew I was talking to Tom. Fear spiked in my chest, sharp and hot. Maybe Mark was right. Maybe I was out of my depth. They had money. They had connections. They had the ability to erase me. But then I thought of Evelyn. A facility. They were going to lock her away to keep her quiet. I grabbed my keys and drove to Evelyn's house. It was nearly 11 o'clock. The street was dark. I pulled into the driveway and ran to the porch. The porch light was off again. "Grandma?" I called, unlocking the door. Evelyn was in the living room, sitting in her armchair in the dark. She jumped when I entered. "Sarah?" she gasped. "You scared me." "I am sorry," I said, locking the door behind me and pulling the curtains tight. "I just had a bad feeling. Mom and Dad said they are thinking about putting you in a home." Evelyn let out a dry, bitter laugh. "I expect they are. I am a loose end." "Sarah, and your parents hate loose ends. Are you okay?" I asked. "I am shaken," she admitted. "Sarah, go check the mailbox." "Now?" "Yes. Go." I went out to the porch and opened the metal mailbox attached to the wall. The lid was bent, like someone had pried it open. It was empty. I went back inside. It is empty, and the lid is bent. I had mail today. Evelyn said, "I saw the postman come, and I saw him put a slip in there. The certified letter slip." "What certified letter?" I requested a copy of the deed to the house. Evelyn said, "And a copy of the loan documents from the bank, the ones with your name on them. I wanted to have official copies, not just my notes." "And they are gone?" "Someone took them." Evelyn said, "Someone came onto the porch while I was inside and took the mail." She looked at me, her face pale in the gloom. "They are watching. Sarah, they know we are moving, and they are scrubbing the evidence. They texted me." I said, showing her the phone, "Stop digging." Evelyn reached out and took my hand. Her grip was trembling, but her eyes were dry. "They are trying to scare us," she said, "because they are scared. Bullies only escalate when they feel the ground shaking. But if they take your mail, if they come into your house, let them come," Evelyn said. "I am not confused. Sarah, I am not senile, and I am not going to a facility without a fight. But you need to know what they will do. They will paint me as a crazy old woman. They will say I made up the stories in the box. They will say I am manipulating you. I won't let them. I vowed. You might not have a choice," Evelyn said. "But we have something they don't have." "What?" "We have nothing left to lose," she said. "And that makes us dangerous." I slept on her couch that night, listening to the wind rattle the mailbox, wondering if my father's car was parked somewhere down the street, watching. The waiting was the hardest part. Suspension is a purgatory where you are neither employed nor unemployed, just a ghost haunting your own LinkedIn profile. I spent 3 days staring at my phone, willing it to ring, while Rachel Kim launched the first mortar shell of our counteroffensive. She filed a formal complaint with the legal department of my company, specifically naming improper third-party influence and tortious interference. It was a sterile, legal way of saying, "You let an outsider poison your employee." And we know it. The reaction was almost immediate, though not in the way I expected. I didn't get called back to work. Instead, the tone of the emails changed. The silence from Gary, the HR director, was replaced by careful, measured questions from a woman named Louisa in the general counsel's office. Ms. Cooper, can you clarify your relationship with Denton and Associates? Ms. Cooper, do you have any records of prior conflicts with the principal of the consulting firm? They were scared. Rachel said fear was good. Fear meant they were checking their liability insurance. On a Tuesday afternoon, my phone rang. It was a number I recognized from the office directory. But it wasn't Gary or Louisa. It was Gordon Phelps. Gordon was the compliance lead. He was a quiet man with a penchant for bow ties and a reputation for being a stickler for the rules. We had only spoken twice, once during onboarding, and once when I lost my badge in the parking lot. "Sarah," he said. His voice was low, as if he were closing a door. "I am off-site today. I am grabbing a coffee at the Beanery on 4th Street. If you happen to be in the area in 20 minutes. I have some thoughts on the weather." It was code. I grabbed my keys. The coffee shop was crowded, the air thick with the smell of roasted beans and damp coats. Gordon was sitting in a booth in the far back, nursing a black coffee. He didn't stand up when I approached. He just nodded at the empty seat opposite him. "I am not here," he said, staring into his cup. "And we are not having this conversation." "Understood," I said. My heart was hammering against my ribs. "The investigation has been kicked upstairs," Gordon said quietly. "Legal is looking at the vendor contract with Denton. But you need to know something. Sarah, the file they have on you? The one that triggered the suspension? It didn't go through the standard background check portal." "How did it get there?" I asked. "It was emailed directly to the VP of Operations," Gordon said, marked urgent, high priority risk alert, and the language. It wasn't the usual unable to verify dates or skills mismatch. It specifically referenced a past theft incident involving liquid assets. I felt the blood drain from my face. "Theft incident? That is a lie. I have never stolen anything." "I believe you," Gordon said, finally looking me in the eye. "Because there was no police report attached, no court records, just a narrative, a story. But in our business, a story about theft is enough to kill a career. They treated it as fact because of who sent it. Paula Denton," I whispered. "The email came from her personal account, not the general firm alias." Gordon said, "It was presented as a favor. I thought you should know who you hired." That is how they framed it. Not as a service, but as a warning between friends. He took a sip of his coffee. "Be careful. Sarah, they are circling the wagons. They are going to try to make this about your performance to cover up the procedural mess. Don't sign anything." He stood up, buttoned his coat, and walked out without looking back. I sat there for 10 minutes, shaking. A past theft incident. It was the same lie, the same ghost. When I got to Jenna's apartment that evening, she was sitting on the floor surrounded by printed pages. She had that look in her eye, the one she got when she was solving a puzzle or plotting a murder. "You need to see this," she said, not even saying hello. I sat down next to her. "What is it?" "I went to the library," Jenna said. "I started digging into the archives. Not for you, for your dad." "My dad?" I kept thinking about that phrase. Jenna said, "Missing funds. It is so specific. Sarah, it is weirdly corporate for a family dispute. So I searched Mark Cooper and funds in the local paper archives." She slid a photocopy toward me. It was a grainy scan from the business section of the Cedar Hollow Gazette. Dated 12 years ago, the headline read, "Partnership dissolved amidst financial disagreement." I scanned the text. It was a dry report about the breakup of a small investment consultancy my father had run with a man named David Halloway. I remembered that time. My father had been stressed, angry, drinking more than usual. He had told us David was incompetent. "Read the third paragraph," Jenna said. I read it. "The dissolution follows an internal audit regarding unaccounted funds totaling nearly $40,000. While no charges were filed, Mr. Halloway alleged that personal expenses were improperly categorized as business losses. Unaccounted funds. I read aloud. Missing funds. Your dad was the one accused of moving money. Jenna said. He was the one who had a cloud over his head, but he spun it, blamed the partner, and walked away. Sarah, don't you see? He is projecting. He is taking the thing he is most ashamed of, financial impropriety, and pasting it onto you. I stared at the paper. He calls me a thief. I whispered, because he is one. It made a sick kind of sense. The obsession with reputation. The need to control the narrative. If I was the family screw-up, the thief, then he was the responsible patriarch cleaning up my messes. I was his scapegoat. There is more, I said, my voice hardening. I need to go to Evelyn's. I drove to my grandmother's house with the newspaper article burning a hole in my bag. Evelyn was waiting for me. She looked better than she had the other night, but there was still a fragility to her movements that scared me. Did you find something? She asked as I walked in. Jenna found something about Dad. I said, but I need to see the rest of the file. Grandma, you said there was a loan document. Evelyn nodded. She went to the bedroom and returned with the metal box. She pulled out an envelope I hadn't opened yet. It was marked 2015. The bank. I found this in your father's home office years ago. Evelyn said, I was looking for a stamp in his desk. This was buried under a stack of invoices. I made a copy before I put it back. She handed me a document. It was a promissory note for a private loan. $15,000. Dated 7 years ago. At the bottom of the page, above the line borrower, was a signature. Sarah Cooper. I stared at it. The loops were my loops. The slant was my slant, but I didn't remember signing it. 7 years ago, I was struggling to pay rent on a studio apartment. I didn't take out a $15,000 loan. I didn't sign this. I said, my finger hovering over the ink. I mean, it looks like my signature, but I never saw this money. Where did it go? Look at the cosigner. Evelyn said. I looked. Mark Cooper. And look at the deposit account. Evelyn pointed. That is not your account number. Sarah, that is the account for your father's business entity. He took out a loan in my name? I asked. The room tilting. He forged my signature? Or he tricked you? Evelyn said. Think back. 7 years ago. Did he ever ask you to sign a stack of papers? Maybe for insurance? Or a car title? I closed my eyes, trying to swim back through the years. I don't know. He handled my taxes that year. He said it was complicated because of my freelance work. He brought me a pile of forms to sign. He said, just sign here, here, and here, and I will take care of the IRS. You signed a loan, Evelyn said, and he took the money. And if you ever tried to leave, or if you ever got too successful, he would have this hanging over you, a debt you didn't know you had. He stole my identity. I said, the rage was different now. It wasn't hot. It was cold. It was ice. He stole my name to pay his debts, and then he ruined my name to keep me quiet. I am going to kill him. I said, it wasn't a threat of violence. It was a promise of destruction. No, Evelyn said, you are going to confront him. But you take a copy. Leave the original here. I drove to Cedar Hollow. It was 9 o'clock at night. The house was lit up like a beacon. I didn't knock. I used my key and walked straight into the den. Mark and Linda were watching television. They looked up, startled by my sudden entrance. Sarah? Linda said, clutching her chest. You nearly gave me a heart attack. What is wrong with you? I walked over to the coffee table and slapped the photocopy of the loan document down on top of their architectural digest. Tell me what this is, I said. Mark looked at the paper. His face didn't crumble. It went blank, a mask of absolute neutrality. It appears to be a loan document. He said, it is a loan for $15,000 in my name. I said, deposited into your account, signed by me on a date when I was trusting you to file my taxes. Oh, that, Mark said, waving a hand dismissively. Sarah, you are being dramatic. That was an arrangement. You agreed to help the family. We were having a cash flow issue with the business. You signed the papers so we could secure the bridge loan. We paid it back. I never agreed to that, I shouted. You slipped it in with my tax forms. You tricked me. Sarah, stop shouting, Linda said, standing up. Tears were already welling in her eyes. Her primary defense mechanism. We were in trouble. We were going to lose the house. We did everything for you, paid for your college, paid for your car, and when we needed a little help, you helped us. Why are you rewriting history? Rewriting history? I stared at her. You committed fraud. You used my credit. It was for your future, Linda cried. If we lost the house, where would you have gone when you lost your jobs? We did it to keep a roof over your head. You made me lose the jobs, I screamed. You sabotaged me so I would need the roof. You are confused, Mark said, standing up to join Linda. You are agitated. This is exactly why people worry about you. Sarah, you take a simple family financial matter and turn it into a federal case. We paid off the loan. It didn't hurt you. It is fraud. I said, and I'm going to a lawyer. Mark's eyes narrowed. Be very careful. Sarah, if you start accusing your parents of crimes, you will look unhinged. Who is going to believe you? The girl who gets fired from every job she has? Or the respected community members who have supported her for a decade? I have the document. I said, you have a copy of a paper you signed. Mark said, it proves nothing but your ingratitude. I grabbed the paper and stormed out. I couldn't breathe in that house. It sucked the oxygen right out of my lungs. The next morning, I sat in Rachel's office. I was shaking. I told her about the loan. I showed her the document. Rachel studied it for a long time. Sarah, I believe you, she said. But Mark is right about one thing. In a court of law, this is a document with your genuine signature on it. Proving you were tricked into signing it 7 years ago is incredibly difficult. It becomes a he said, she said. So he gets away with it? Not necessarily. Rachel said, but we don't lead with this. If we accuse him of forgery and lose, it damages your credibility. We keep this in our back pocket. We focus on the defamation. We focus on the current job. We focus on Paula Denton. Speaking of Paula, I said, I am meeting her. Rachel looked up sharply. You are? I sent her an email. I told her I wanted to clear the air. I told her I was thinking of leaving the industry and wanted her advice. She agreed to meet me for lunch. Sarah, that is risky, Rachel warned. She is a professional operator. I'm not going to argue with her. I said, I am going to listen, and I'm going to record it. Make sure you are in a one-party consent state context, Rachel said. Illinois is a two-party consent state for private conversations. But if you are in a public place where there is no expectation of privacy, it is a gray area. But take notes, detailed notes. I met Paula Denton at a bistro in the city. She was polished, wearing a suit that cost more than my car. She ordered a sparkling water and smiled at me with the benevolence of a shark. Sarah, she said, it is good to see you. Your mother tells me you are having a rough patch. I am, I said, keeping my hands folded on the table to hide the tremor. I feel like I keep hitting walls. I wanted to ask, do you think I am just not cut out for this level of work? Paula sighed, a theatrical exhale of sympathy. Oh, honey, it is not about ability. It is about temperament. Some people just aren't built for the corporate pressure cooker. Your mother and I were talking just the other day about how much happier you were when you were working at that little bookstore. I froze. I had never worked at a bookstore. Bookstore? I asked. I never worked at a bookstore. Paula waved a hand. Oh, I must have misspoke. I meant the library, or that little nonprofit, the one with Tom Alvarez. My heart stopped. I hadn't mentioned Tom Alvarez to my mother in years, and I certainly hadn't mentioned him to Paula. Tom Alvarez, I said, keeping my voice steady. Right, that was a hard exit. Yes, well, Paula said, taking a sip of her water. When Tom called me, he was very concerned about your organizational skills. I watched her face. Tom called you? Oh, we run in the same circles, Paula said quickly, realizing she had stepped on a landmine. Industry events. You know how it is. But Tom works in nonprofit arts. I said, you work in corporate risk mitigation. What circles are those? Paula? Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Sarah, dear, you are grilling me. I am just trying to give you advice. Perhaps you should look into something less demanding. For your parents' sake. They worry so much. I stood up. Thank you for the advice. Paula, it has been very illuminating. I walked out to my car and immediately wrote it down. She claimed Tom called her. Tom told me he never spoke to her. She knew about Tom. She slipped. My phone buzzed. It was an email from Louisa in legal at my company. Subject: settlement proposal. Without prejudice. I opened it. Dear Ms. Cooper, in light of the recent administrative review, the company would like to offer a mutual separation agreement. We are prepared to offer 3 months of severance pay and a neutral reference. Provided you sign a full release of claims and a non-disclosure agreement regarding your departure, they were buying me off. 3 months of pay. A clean break. I could take the money. I could walk away. I could stop fighting my parents. Stop digging into the past. Stop the pain. I stared at the number. It was enough to live on for a while. Enough to move away. But if I signed, I couldn't sue Paula. I couldn't expose the lie. I would be accepting that I was the problem. I hit reply. Dear Louisa, I reject the offer. I am not resigning. I expect to be reinstated once your investigation concludes that the verification call was fraudulent. I will not sign an NDA. I sent it. My hand was shaking so hard I dropped the phone. I drove straight to Evelyn's. I needed to tell her. I needed to tell her I didn't take the money. When I pulled up to the house, there was an ambulance in the driveway. The lights were flashing, red and white, slicing through the afternoon gloom. My heart hammered in my throat. I slammed the car into park and ran across the lawn. Grandma! I screamed. 2 paramedics were wheeling a gurney out the front door. Evelyn was on it. She was conscious, but she looked tiny, swallowed up by the blankets. An oxygen mask was strapped to her face. Grandma! I grabbed the railing of the gurney. She looked at me. Her eyes were unfocused for a second. Then they cleared. She reached out a hand, her fingers grasping for mine. Sarah. She rasped behind the mask. I am here. I sobbed. I am here. What happened? Chest pain, the paramedic said. Possible myocardial infarction. We are taking her to St. Jude's. I am coming. I said. I followed the ambulance to the hospital. The drive was a blur of terror. The timing was cruel. Just as I was standing up, just as I was finding my footing, the one person holding me up was crumbling. I sat in the emergency room waiting area for 2 hours. Finally, a doctor came out. She is stable, he said. It was a minor heart attack. We caught it early, but she is very weak. She needs rest. No stress. Can I see her? 5 minutes, he said. I walked into the room. The machines were beeping, a steady, rhythmic reminder of how fragile life was. Evelyn was lying in the bed, looking paler than the sheets. I took her hand. It felt like dry leaves. I am sorry. I whispered. This is my fault. The stress. The parents. Evelyn opened her eyes. She squeezed my hand with surprising strength. Stop it, she whispered. Her voice was rough. I turned down the settlement. I told her. Tears running down my face. They offered me money to quit, to go away. I said no. Evelyn smiled. It was a weak, crooked smile. But it was there. Good, she breathed. I am scared, Grandma, I admitted. If I lose you, I can't do this without you. Evelyn pulled my hand closer, forcing me to lean in. Her eyes locked onto mine, fierce and demanding. You can, she said, and you will. She took a breath, the monitors beeping faster. Sarah, listen to me, she said. I didn't save that file so you would win money. I didn't keep those papers so you could get a settlement. Then why? I asked. I saved it so you would stop living like you are guilty. She said, I saved it so you would know who you are. She closed her eyes, exhausted by the effort. You are not a thief. Sarah, she whispered, get my name back. Get your name back. I sat there, holding her hand as she drifted into sleep. The beep of the monitor was the only sound in the room. I will. I promise the silence. I will get it all back. The office of Rachel Kim had become my war room. The smell of yeast from the bakery downstairs no longer made me hungry. It just marked the passage of time. I had spent hours staring at the peeling paint on the wall, waiting for the phone to ring, waiting for the other shoe to drop. But today, Rachel wasn't staring at the wall. She was holding a piece of paper, and for the first time since I met her, she was smiling. We got him, Rachel said. She didn't offer a preamble. She slid the document across the desk toward me. It was a sworn affidavit from Tom Alvarez. I picked it up, my hands trembling. Reading Tom's words in legal black and white was different than hearing them over coffee. On or about October 12th, 2019, I received a phone call from an individual identifying herself as an administrator from the University of Illinois. The individual claimed Sarah Cooper had been dismissed for financial dishonesty. Based on this information, I rescinded the promotion offer. "This is admissible," I whispered. "He actually signed it." "He did," Rachel said, "and he is not the only one." She pulled a second sheet of paper from a folder. "Do you remember a woman named Karen Vance? From the temp agency you used in 2020? I nodded. I thought she hated me. She stopped returning my calls after a week. "She didn't hate you," Rachel said. "She was scared. I tracked her down. I told her we were investigating a pattern of interference. She admitted that she received a call the day before your assignment ended. A woman claiming to be a former landlord." "A landlord?" I asked, baffled. "The caller said you had been evicted for stealing packages from neighbors." Rachel said, "Karen didn't want a thief in her client's office, so she cut you loose. She signed a statement this morning." I sat back in the chair, feeling the air leave my lungs. A university administrator, a landlord, a concerned neighbor. My mother was a shapeshifter. She had curated a gallery of characters, each one designed to target the specific insecurities of my employers. "It is a pattern," I said. "It is undeniable now. It is actionable," Rachel corrected. "And your current employer knows it." She tapped her computer screen. "We have a conference call with Louisa from legal in 10 minutes. And Sarah? You are in the driver's seat this time." The call was brief and brutal. Louisa's voice, usually crisp and authoritative, sounded strained. "Ms. Cooper," Louisa said through the speakerphone, "we have completed our internal review regarding the verification call. We have determined that the information provided to us did not meet our standards for actionable intelligence. Furthermore, we have identified irregularities regarding the source." "Irregularities," Rachel repeated, her voice dry. "You mean you found out the source was a paid consultant with a personal conflict of interest?" There was a pause. "We have terminated our contract with Denton and Associates effective immediately," Louisa said. "We are prepared to lift your administrative leave. We would like to offer you reinstatement to your position. Effective Monday. Full back pay will be issued." It was the victory I had fantasized about for weeks. I could go back. I could walk into the office, water my succulent, and sit at my desk. I could have my salary. I could have my life back. But as I imagined walking through those glass doors, I felt a cold knot in my stomach. I pictured Gary looking at me. I pictured the whispers in the break room. "That is the girl they investigated." Even if I went back, the stain was there, and every time I made a mistake, every time I lost a receipt or forgot a password, they would wonder, "I don't want the job." I said. Rachel looked at me, raising an eyebrow, but she didn't interrupt. "Excuse me?" Louisa asked. "I can't go back," I said, leaning into the speaker. "You suspended me without cause based on gossip. You let an outside vendor dictate my employment status. The trust is broken. I won't work in an environment where I have to look over my shoulder." "Then what are you proposing?" Louisa asked, her tone hardening. "Resignation?" "No," I said. "I want a mutual separation. I want 6 months of severance. But more than that, I want a letter." "A letter?" "I want a formal letter of exoneration." I said, "Signed by the VP of HR. I want it to state clearly that my employment ended due to a voluntary separation, that I am eligible for rehire." and that the investigation into my integrity found absolutely no evidence of wrongdoing. I wanted to explicitly state that the allegations were unfounded. We don't typically issuing such detailed, Louisa started. You do if you want to avoid a lawsuit for wrongful termination and negligence. Rachel cut in. We have the affidavits. Louisa, we know Denton was on your payroll. Do you really want that discovery process to play out in public court? Silence stretched on the line for 10 seconds. We will draft the letter, Louisa said. You will have it by 5 o'clock. When the call ended, I didn't cheer. I felt a profound, heavy sadness. I had won my name back. But I had lost the career I was building. Now comes the hard part, Rachel said. We have cleared your name with the company. Now we go after the people who dirtied it. She opened a new file on her desk. I filed the civil claim this morning. Defamation, tortious interference, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. We listed the defendants as John and Jane Doe for now, to avoid tipping them off before we get the subpoena returns. And the subpoenas? I asked. We subpoenaed the phone records for the number that called your office, Rachel said. The one linked to the Denton firm but not listed in their directory. She handed me a map. It was a printout of the area surrounding Cedar Hollow. There was a red dot marked on a strip mall about 2 miles from my parents' house. The number is a prepaid burner phone, Rachel said. Untraceable to a billing address, but the carrier records show where it was topped up. Every time the phone was used to call one of your employers. It was reloaded with minutes at this location. I looked at the map. The Stop and Shop on Elm Street. Does that mean anything to you? It is where my mother buys her lottery tickets. I said, she goes there every Tuesday and Friday. She says it is her lucky store. We have dates. Rachel said, September 12th, November 4th, January 10th, all dates that align with your job losses, all dates where minutes were purchased at that specific store. It is circumstantial. I said, she could say anyone bought them. It connects the caller geographically to your parents, Rachel said. It proves the caller isn't some random administrator in Chicago. It proves the caller is someone who shops for groceries in Cedar Hollow. Combined with the email to Paula Denton, it is a noose. Sarah, I took the map. The red dot looked like a bullet wound. I left Rachel's office and drove to Jenna's. I needed to see a friendly face. I needed to remember that not everyone in my life was playing a game of three-dimensional chess with my sanity. Jenna was in her kitchen, furiously scrolling on her laptop. She didn't offer me a drink. She spun the laptop around to face me. You know how your mom is always on that iPad? Jenna asked. Yeah, I said. She says she is looking at recipes. She is not looking at recipes, Jenna said. She is on Nextdoor, and she is on this private invite-only forum for Cedar Hollow residents. It is called the Briar Patch. The Briar Patch? It is a gossip mill, Jenna said. Rich people warning each other about contractors who leave dust, or gardeners who take too many breaks. I got into it using a fake profile. She pointed to the screen. Look at this user. Garden Rose 55. That is Mom, I said instantly. Her email address starts with Garden Rose. Look at her post history, Jenna said. I scrolled. It was a terrifying archive of casual malice. Warning to neighbors. The new dog walker. Intense eyes. Seems unstable. I would not trust him with a key. Regarding the babysitter from the agency, I heard she was let go from her last family for inviting guests over. Better safe than sorry. Housekeeper alert. Check your silver. Just a feeling. There were dozens of them. Years of them. Small, poisonous seeds planted in the community. She wasn't just doing it to me. She was doing it to everyone she deemed unworthy. She gets off on it, Jenna said, her voice disgusted. She likes being the gatekeeper. She likes deciding who gets to work and who doesn't. You weren't special. Sarah, you were just her biggest project. I was her masterpiece. I said, she practiced on the dog walker so she could perfect destroying me. I felt a surge of nausea. This wasn't protection. It wasn't love. It was a pathology. I am going over there. I said, Sarah, don't. Jenna said, wait for the lawsuit. Let the lawyers handle it. No, I said, I have the screenshots. I have the map. I have the affidavit. I am not going to let them hide behind lawyers. I need to hear them say it. I took the screenshots, I took the map, and I drove to Cedar Hollow. It was late afternoon. The sun was setting, casting long golden shadows across the manicured lawns. It looked so peaceful. It looked like the kind of place where nothing bad ever happened. My parents were in the sunroom. It was their favorite room. A glass-enclosed space overlooking the garden. They were drinking tea. It was a scene from a magazine. They looked up when I slid the glass door open. I hadn't come through the front door. I had walked around the back. "Sarah," my mother said, putting her cup down. She looked annoyed, not welcoming. "We didn't know you were coming. We are just about to have dinner. I know about the burner phone." I said. I didn't shout. My voice was deadly quiet. I walked to the glass table and dropped the map with the red dot on it. "I know you bought the minutes at the Stop and Shop on Elm Street." I continued. "I know you used that phone to call the temp agency. I know you used it to call Tom Alvarez." Mark looked at the map, then at me. His face was stone. "I don't know what you're talking about, and I know about Garden Rose 55, I said, dropping the printouts of the forum posts. "I know you like to play God with people's jobs. Mom, I know you get a thrill out of being the one who warns people." Linda picked up the screenshots. Her hand didn't shake. She looked at them with a strange, detached curiosity. "You have been spying on me," she said. "That is an invasion of privacy." "Sarah, you called my employers and told them I was a thief." I screamed. The quiet was gone. "You impersonated a university official. You impersonated a landlord. That is not privacy. That is a crime." "It was necessary," Linda said. She looked up at me, and her eyes were terrifyingly clear. "We had to teach you consequences." "Consequences for what?" I demanded. "For the theft that never happened?" "For your attitude," Linda said. "For your arrogance. You walk around like you don't need us. You think you can just move to the city and be this big professional woman and forget where you came from. We gave you everything, Sarah. And you treat us like an obligation. So you ruined my life to make me humble?" I asked. "You destroyed my career so I would be, what, grateful?" "We wanted you safe," Mark said. He stood up, walking over to stand beside Linda. "You were getting too independent. Sarah, you were making plans to move to New York. Did you think we didn't know that?" I froze. I had looked at apartments in New York 3 years ago. I had never told them. "You were going to leave," Mark said. His voice was laced with a bitter venom I had never heard before. "After all the money we spent, after the private schools, the car, the loans, you were going to just pack up and leave us here, forgetting who paid for your schooling, forgetting who made you." "I am 32 years old," I yelled. "I am allowed to leave." "Not until you pay your debts," Mark said. "Not until you understand that you belong to this family. You are an investment, Sarah. And we don't let our investments walk away." The word hung in the air. Investment. It wasn't love. It wasn't even twisted protection. It was ownership. I was an asset. And when the asset tried to liquidate itself, they froze the accounts. "You admit it," I said, tears streaming down my face. "You admit you did it." "I admit we did what was best for the family," Mark said. "And if you had any loyalty, you would thank us. Instead, you are running around with lawyers, threatening to expose your own parents. It is disgusting." "Disgusting?" I laughed, a broken, jagged sound. "You forged a loan in my name to save your business. You called me a thief to cover your own financial mess. That is disgusting." Mark's face turned red. "I did what I had to do," he roared. "The business was underwater. I needed that liquidity. And you were just sitting there, wasting your potential. I used your credit because you owed me. I owed you nothing. You owe us your life," Linda shrieked. She stood up, knocking her teacup over. It shattered on the floor. "We sacrificed everything for you. And now you are killing him. Look at your father. You are stressing him to death. Do you want him to have a heart attack? Is that what you want?" She began to sob. It was a loud, wailing sound. "You are killing him. Sarah, You are going to put him in an early grave with your selfishness. The old programming kicked in. The sound of my mother crying had always been my command to surrender. My stomach twisted. I looked at my father, whose face was flushed and sweaty. Maybe I was pushing too hard. Maybe I was the villain. Maybe I should just stop. Just stop it, Linda wailed. Drop this lawsuit. Apologize. We can fix this. We can be a family again. I wavered. I took a step back. The pull of the familiar was so strong. I just wanted them to love me. I just wanted the fighting to stop. I started to speak. Then I saw the map on the table, the red dot, the store where she bought the minutes to destroy me. I looked at Linda. She was crying, but she was watching me through her fingers, checking to see if it was working. It was a performance. No, I said. Linda stopped crying instantly. She lowered her hands. What? No, I repeated. I am not killing him. He is killing himself. And you are not a mother. You are a warden. I turned around. If you walk out that door. Mark yelled. You are cut off. You hear me? You will never see a dime. You will never step foot in this house again. I stopped at the door. I looked back at them. The expensive furniture, the shattered teacup, the rot beneath the surface. I know. I said. That is the point. I walked out. I got into my car. I drove until my hands stopped shaking. I ended up at Evelyn's house. I let myself in. Evelyn was sitting in her armchair, a blanket tucked around her legs. She looked better, but still frail. She saw my face, the red eyes, the exhaustion, and she knew, you went to see them. She said, I had to. I said, collapsing onto the sofa. They admitted it. Grandma, Dad said I was an investment. He said I was trying to leave and he had to stop me. Evelyn nodded slowly. They think children are property. They always have. Mom told me I was killing him. I said, my voice breaking. She screamed it. She said I was putting him in an early grave. Guilt, Evelyn said softly. It is their strongest weapon. Sarah, it is the only one they have left. They can't control your money anymore. They can't control your job. So they try to control your conscience. It almost worked. I whispered. I almost apologized. But you didn't. Evelyn said, no, I didn't. Evelyn leaned forward. You have to decide now. What kind of adult life do you want? Do you want the fantasy? The one where they finally wake up and love you the way you deserve? I want that so much. I admitted. It doesn't exist, Evelyn said brutally. That is a child's dream. The reality is what you saw today. If you want to be free, you have to let go of the hope that they will change. You have to accept that you are an orphan. Sarah, not because they are dead, but because they are incapable of being parents. Tears ran down my face. It hurts. Growing pains always do. Evelyn said, but you are finally growing. She pointed to the box of files on the table. So, what are you going to do? I looked at the files. The evidence. The proof. I'm going to finish it. I said, I am going to tell Rachel to serve the subpoenas on them directly. I am going to name them in the lawsuit. Good, Evelyn said. But, I added, I am not going to be like them. What do you mean? Linda posts on that forum to humiliate people. I said, she spreads rumors to destroy reputations in town. I could leak this. I could tell the neighbors. I could post those screenshots on Facebook and watch them burn. I thought about the satisfaction of it, the public shaming. But I won't. I said, I don't want to destroy them. I just want to stop them. I will focus on the facts, the court documents, the legal accountability. I won't drag innocent bystanders into it. I won't use their tactics. That is a hard line to walk. Evelyn warned, revenge is slippery. It is not revenge, I said. Standing up, it is justice, and there is a difference. I am proud of you, Evelyn said. I went to the kitchen and made us tea. I checked the lock on the front door. I checked the mailbox, which was empty. The next morning, I called Rachel. Go ahead, I said. Put their names on the filing. Are you sure? Rachel asked. Once we name Mark and Linda Cooper, it becomes public record. The local paper might pick it up, I am sure. I said, I am done hiding their secrets. Okay, Rachel said. I will have the process server deliver the papers tomorrow. I hung up. I looked around my apartment. It was small. It was rented. The furniture was cheap. But for the first time in my life, the air inside felt entirely my own. Discovery is a sterile word for a violent process. In legal terms, it means the exchange of information. In my life, it meant watching the curtain get ripped down, revealing the rusty, grinding gears of the machine that had been chewing me up for a decade. For weeks, boxes of documents arrived at Rachel's office. I sat on the floor, sorting through them, breathing in the dust of my own destruction. We had subpoenaed Denton and Associates, my father's business entity, and the phone carriers. The first smoking gun didn't look like a gun. It looked like an invoice. It was from Denton and Associates, billed to Cooper Holdings, LLC, my father's shell company for his investments. The date on the invoice was October 14th, 2019. The line item read, Retainer for Strategic Advisory Services. The amount was $2,500. I looked at the calendar on the wall. October 14th, 2019. That is 2 days before I lost the promotion at the nonprofit. I said, my voice was flat. I was past shock. I was in a place of cold, hard calculation. Rachel leaned over my shoulder. Look at the next one. She said, November 2020. Another invoice, consulting verification fee, $500. 3 days later, the temp agency fired me. He paid her, I whispered. He didn't just gossip with her at a book club. He hired her. He paid her professional fees to ruin my life. It creates a paper trail, Rachel said, her eyes gleaming with the thrill of the hunt. It moves this from a family spat to a commercial conspiracy. Paula Denton wasn't acting as a friend. She was acting as a paid vendor interfering with your livelihood. We found the emails next. They were fragments, mostly, recovered from a backup server Paula's IT guy hadn't wiped clean enough. Subject, the Lake Briar issue. From P. Denton to Mark Cooper. Message, Mark. I made the call to the VP. I used the script we discussed regarding the liability concerns. They are spooked. Expect movement by Friday. The script. I read aloud. They had a script. This is it. Rachel said, this is the intent. They planned it. They executed it. And they invoiced it. 2 weeks later, we deposed Paula Denton. It happened in a conference room in downtown Chicago. Paula showed up wearing a cream-colored power suit, flanked by 2 lawyers who looked like they charged more per hour than I made in a month. She didn't look at me. She sat at the head of the table, adjusted her silk scarf, and prepared to lie. Rachel was methodical. She started slow, asking about Paula's background, her firm's protocols, her relationship with my parents. Paula was smooth. She smiled. She gave non-answers. She claimed her relationship with the Coopers was purely social. Ms. Denton, Rachel said, looking down at her legal pad, you stated that you perform rigorous background checks. Can you describe the specific verification you performed on Sarah Cooper regarding her employment at the logistics firm in 2016? I recall making some inquiries, Paula said breezily. There were rumors of financial mismanagement. Rumors from whom? Rachel asked. Industry chatter. Paula said, you know how people talk. I don't. Rachel said, please explain. Did you speak to a supervisor? A manager? I spoke to a confidential source. Paula said, Ms. Denton, Rachel said, sliding a piece of paper across the table. This is a phone log from your office landline. It shows a 12-minute call to the logistics firm's HR department on the day Sarah was fired. But it also shows a call 10 minutes prior to that. From Mark Cooper's cell phone. Paula stiffened. Mark often called me for advice. Did Mark Cooper tell you to make that call? Rachel asked. Absolutely not. Paula scoffed. I act independently. Then explain this, Rachel said. She played a short audio file on her laptop. It was a voicemail Paula had left on my father's phone. A file we had recovered during discovery because my father. in his arrogance, had saved it. "Mark, it is Paula. I spoke to the hiring manager. I told them about the petty cash issue. I made sure to emphasize that you had covered it up to protect her, which makes you look like a saint, and her look like a liability. It is done." The silence in the room was absolute. Paula's face went the color of ash. Her lawyer leaned over and whispered furiously in her ear. I was paraphrasing. Paula stammered, "I was trying to help the family." "By lying?" Rachel pressed. "By fabricating a petty cash issue that never existed?" "I was told there was an issue," Paula snapped, her composure cracking. "Mark told me there was an issue. I relied on my client's information." "So Mark Cooper is your client?" Rachel asked. "Not just a friend?" "Yes," Paula shouted. "He paid me to handle the situation." Rachel smiled. It was a terrifying smile. "Thank you. Miss Denton, that will be all." The dominoes began to fall. My former employer in Lake Briar, seeing the deposition transcript, panicked. They didn't want to be dragged into a conspiracy lawsuit. They handed over everything. I sat in Rachel's office reading the internal Slack messages from the HR team at my old job. "Gordon, this feels weird. The tip came from Paula Denton personally. She says the girl is a thief." Gary, "Denton is a trusted advisor. If she says there is smoke, there is fire. We can't risk the client data." "Cut her loose. Make up a reason. Make up a reason." I read, "Fit and integrity." They knew. They knew the accusation was thin, but they acted on it because Paula had clout. And Paula had clout because my father bought it. My parents received the formal notice of the lawsuit a week later. I wasn't there to see it. But the shockwaves hit me immediately. My phone blew up. Not from them. Rachel had forbidden them from contacting me directly. But from everyone else. My Aunt Carol, my cousin Mike, even a neighbor I hadn't spoken to in years. "Sarah, what are you doing to your mother?" Aunt Carol texted. "She is devastated. She says you are suing them for money? That you are taking advantage of Evelyn?" Taking advantage of Evelyn. That was their pivot. They couldn't deny the invoices. They couldn't deny the emails. So they attacked the source. They spun a story that I was a greedy, failed daughter who had manipulated a senile old woman into handing over her confused notes to build a frivolous lawsuit. It was classic gaslighting. They were trying to isolate me again, trying to make the family believe I was the predator and they were the victims of their own generosity. Rachel called me on a Tuesday. "They want to mediate," she said. "Their lawyer reached out. They want to settle before this goes to trial." "I don't want to settle." I said, "I want a judgment. Hear them out." Rachel advised, "Mediation is a chance to see their hand, and it is a chance for you to look them in the eye when you say no. But Sarah, it will be ugly." The mediation took place in a glass-walled conference room at a neutral law firm in the city. The air conditioning was set to Arctic. I sat on one side of the long mahogany table with Rachel. On the other side sat Mark and Linda, flanked by their attorney, a man named Mr. Sterling, who wore a suit that looked sharper than his eyes. My parents looked different, aged. Mark's face was red and puffy, as if his blood pressure was redlining. Linda looked small, frail, wearing black like she was attending a funeral. They didn't look at me. They looked at the papers in front of them. "Mr. Sterling started, "We are here to resolve a regrettable family misunderstanding," he said smoothly. "My clients, Mark and Linda Cooper, have only ever acted out of concern for their daughter. However, they recognize that their methods may have been misinterpreted." "Misinterpreted," Rachel repeated, dryly. "You mean the paid invoices for defamation? We are prepared to offer a settlement," Mr. Sterling continued. Ignoring her, "To help Sarah get back on her feet, we are offering a lump sum of $50,000. My parents finally looked up. Linda offered a watery, hopeful smile. "It is a lot of money. Sarah," she said softly, "you could pay off your debts. You could start fresh. There is a condition." "Mr. Sterling added, sliding a document across the table. "Sarah must sign a non-disparagement agreement. She must agree to seal the record of this dispute. She must agree never to discuss the details of her employment history or her parents' involvement with any third party. and she must agree that Evelyn Hart's medical records be placed under the guardianship of Mark Cooper. I stared at the paper. They were trying to buy my silence. And more than that, they were trying to buy Evelyn. They wanted to lock her away, label her incompetent, and bury the truth in a sealed file. "So you want to pay me to shut up," I said, "and you want to take Grandma's freedom. We want to protect Evelyn," Mark said, his voice rough. "She is confused. Sarah, you have dragged her into this mess, and she doesn't understand what she is saying. We need to make sure she is safe." "Safe from whom?" I asked. "From you?" "From herself," Mark snapped. The door to the conference room opened. Everyone turned. Evelyn Hart walked in. She was leaning on a cane, and she looked thin, her cardigan hanging loosely on her frame. But her head was high. She was not confused. She was not frail. She looked like a queen returning to reclaim her throne. Behind her walked Arthur Miller, the retired lawyer she had called weeks ago. "Mother?" Linda gasped. "What are you doing here? You shouldn't be out." Evelyn didn't answer her. She walked to the end of the table and sat down. She placed a heavy red binder on the mahogany surface. It made a loud thud. "I am not confused, Linda," Evelyn said. Her voice was not loud, but it carried the weight of iron. "And I am not in need of a guardian, Mrs. Hart," Mr. Sterling said, standing up. "This is a closed mediation. You are not a party to this lawsuit. I am the evidence," Evelyn said. She opened the binder. October 14th, 2019. She read, "Mark called Paula Denton at 10 in the morning. 12 minutes later, he transferred $2,500 from the business account. 3 hours later, Paula called Sarah's boss. She looked at Mark. "I have the bank statement. Mark, I have the phone log. I have the notes you wrote on the notepad in my kitchen when you thought I was napping." Mark's face turned a dangerous shade of purple. "Mother, put that away. You don't know what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing." Evelyn said, "I am saving my granddaughter from the wolves I raised." She turned the page. "The loan document," she said, 2015. "You forged her signature. Mark, I saw you practicing it. I found the scrap paper in the trash. I kept it." She pulled out a plastic sleeve containing a crumpled piece of yellow legal pad paper. On it, over and over, was my signature. Sarah Cooper, Sarah Cooper, Sarah Cooper, in my father's handwriting. The room went dead silent. This wasn't just interference. This was a felony. Mark stood up so fast his chair tipped over. "I did what I had to do," he screamed. The mask of the concerned patriarch shattered, revealing the desperate, controlling narcissist underneath. "I built this family. I paid for everything. I paid for the college, the clothes, the food. She belongs to me." He pointed a shaking finger at me. "You are nothing without me. Sarah, you would be waiting tables if I hadn't pushed you. I made you. And if I want to break you to fix you, that is my right." "It is not your right," I said. I stood up too. I wasn't shaking anymore. "I am not your property. I am a person." "You are an ungrateful brat," Mark roared. "Taking money from us and then suing us?" "I am not taking your money," I said. I looked at the settlement offer on the table. The check for $50,000. I picked it up. Mark watched me, a sneer curling his lip. "Go ahead. Take it. That is all you want, isn't it? A payday." I ripped the check in half. Then I ripped it again and again, until it was just confetti raining down on the mahogany table. "I don't want your money," I said. "I don't want your settlement, and I will never sign your NDA." "Then what do you want?" Linda cried, tears streaming down her face. "Sarah, please, you are destroying us. I want my name back," I said. "I want a formal, written retraction sent to every single employer you contacted. I want a confession signed by both of you and Paula Denton, admitting that the allegations of theft were fabricated, and I want a permanent court order prohibiting you from contacting any future employer, landlord, or associate of mine. We will never sign that." Mark spat. "It would ruin our reputation." "Then we go to trial," Rachel said, stepping forward. "And we will play that voicemail for the jury, and we will show them the forgery practice sheet. and Evelyn will testify." Mark looked at Evelyn. She stared back, unblinking. "You would do that?" Mark asked his mother. "You would humiliate your own son in public?" "You humiliated my granddaughter in private for 10 years," Evelyn said. "I am just balancing the scales." Mark slumped back into his chair. He looked suddenly small, defeated. He realized, finally, that he had no leverage left. The money didn't work. The guilt didn't work. The fear didn't work. "Fine," he whispered. "Draw up the papers." The judge granted the preliminary order 2 days later. It wasn't a magic wand. It didn't erase the years of trauma. It didn't give me back the lost promotions or the nights I spent crying, wondering why I was so broken. But it was a line in the sand. The order was specific. Mark and Linda Cooper were restrained from contacting Sarah Cooper's employers, landlords, or financial institutions. They were compelled to preserve all records, and they were required to issue a retraction letter, approved by the court, to the list of companies we provided. I sat in the courtroom as the gavel banged down. It was a sharp, final sound. My parents walked out without looking at me. Linda was weeping into a handkerchief. Mark was staring straight ahead, his jaw locked. They walked out of the courtroom and out of my life. I drove Evelyn home. We sat on her porch, watching the sun go down over the quiet street. "Did we win?" I asked. Evelyn took a sip of her iced tea. "We stopped the bleeding," she said. "Healing is a different job. That one is up to you." "I feel empty," I admitted. "I thought I would feel happy." "You are grieving," Evelyn said. "You just buried your parents, Sarah. They are still alive. But the parents you wanted? The ones who would love you unconditionally? You buried them today. It is okay to be sad." I leaned my head on her shoulder. "Thank you, Grandma." "Don't thank me," she said. "Just live. That is the only thank you I want." 6 weeks later, I was sitting in my apartment. The boxes were packed. I was moving, not to New York, and not to somewhere hidden. I was moving to a townhouse 3 blocks from Evelyn. I wasn't running anymore. My phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. My stomach clenched. The old reflex, the Pavlovian response to an unknown number, fear, panic, the certainty that disaster was incoming. I stared at the screen. "Answer it," I told myself. I picked up. "Hello? Hi. Is this Sarah Cooper?" A woman's voice, professional, bright. "Yes, this is Sarah." "Hi, Sarah. This is Elena from Horizon Tech. We received your application for the project lead role. We were very impressed with your portfolio." "Thank you," I said. My hand gripped the phone tight. "We wanted to offer you the position," Elena said. "The team loved you." I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 10 years. That is wonderful news. "Elena, I would be thrilled to accept." "Great," Elena said. "There is just one thing, the trapdoor. Here it comes." "We were doing our final reference checks," Elena said, her voice dropping slightly. "And we got a call this morning, from someone claiming to be a former associate." The world stopped. The room went cold. The sound of blood rushing in my ears was deafening. They said something about a theft issue. Elena said something about missing funds at a previous job. The panic rose up like a tidal wave. It was happening again. Mark had violated the order, or Linda had used a different phone, or Paula had gone rogue. They were never going to stop. I was cursed. I was going to be fighting this forever. "Sarah?" Elena asked. "Are you there?" I looked at the table next to me. On it sat a folder. Inside was the court order, stamped with the judge's seal. Inside was the retraction letter signed by Mark Cooper. Inside was the affidavit from Tom Alvarez. I looked at the paper. It was real. I wasn't the 23-year-old girl crying in her car anymore. I wasn't the victim waiting for the blow to land. I took a deep breath. I didn't panic. "Elena," I said. My voice was steady. It was calm. It was the voice of a woman who owned her own story. I am aware of that narrative. I said, "It is part of a documented campaign of harassment that has been settled in court. I have a legal judgment and a formal retraction letter regarding those specific false allegations. I can forward them to you right now. They will clarify everything." There was a pause on the line. A long, heavy silence. Then Elena spoke. "Oh," she said, "well, if you have documentation, that changes things. Send it over. I will." I said, "Okay," Elena said, her voice brightening again. "Once we review that, I think we can move forward with the onboarding. Welcome to the team. Sarah." I hung up the phone. I stood in the silence of my apartment. The ghost was still there, lurking in the wires, trying to scream my name, but I held the paper in my hand. I held the truth. I walked over to the window and looked out. The sun was shining. The world was noisy and messy and real. I wasn't safe from everything. The world could still hurt me, but they couldn't. Not anymore. I picked up the folder. I walked to my computer. I hit scan. I hit send. And then I started to unpack. Thank you so much for listening to my parents told every employer I was a thief. Grandma had already prepared for that. It has been a journey walking in Sarah's shoes, and I hope her fight for reclaiming her name resonated with you. I would love to know where you are listening from today. Please drop a comment below with your city or country. And if you enjoyed this story, please make sure to subscribe to Revenge Stories for more tales of justice and family drama. Share your thoughts in the comments. What would you have done if you were in Sarah's position? I read every single one. Stay safe and keep fighting.